Hello all, in this particular tutorial we will learn how to do the step-by-step setup of Microsoft Windows 2019 failover cluster using VMware Workstation Pro 17. To do this particular exercise you only need two softwares. One is Windows Server 2019 and you need VMware Workstation. Now, I am using both of these softwares. I'm using the evaluation version. So what I'll do is I'll take this, I'll copy this, I'll open the browser of your choice and I'll say download. And once you do that, you can see here, there's a link Windows Server 2019 Evaluation Center and ISO downloads. Just double click on that and it will start downloading this evaluation version. So this is the image that I'm using. This is the ISO. It's going to take some time for it to download. I'm not going to use that because I've already downloaded it. And the second software that we need is the VMware Workstation Pro 17. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to paste it here. And you can see that we have got a link called download VMware Workstation Pro. So I'm going to click on that link and then here it says download now. We are going to use the Windows version because I'm recording this on a Windows. So click on download now and it's going to download the VMware Workstation. So again, I have downloaded it, so I'm not going to do that. I can safely close my browser. These are the only two softwares that you need to perform this particular exercise or perform this particular lab. The next part is overview. So basically our machines are divided into three machines. So we need a domain controller. This will be the first node in the cluster. This will be the second node in the cluster. So these two nodes will be part of the cluster and this will be the domain controller. Now, the trick that I'm doing here is like the domain controller will be also used as a file server. So I do not want to only complicate it. So if you want a separate file server, then you'll have to install another server as a file server separately. However, my domain controller will act as a file server. Now, if you have a SAN storage or NAS storage, you can definitely use those storage boxes to set up the shared devices, shared disk. However, in my case, I'm using the domain controller as the file server. Now, the first thing that you need to do is you need to install the Windows 2019 evaluation version, the one which we downloaded. You can give host name of your choice. I'll be giving you can basically I'll not even set the host name because it's going to change. Then we are going to set the adapter type. When we install, we are going to set the adapter type to breached and we are going to install VMware tools and reboot the machine. So this is the first step. The next part, once we have got, this is your base machine. This is your gold image. Do not touch this. So keep this as a safety. And the reason for that is like if while doing this exercise, if anything goes wrong, you can always clone from this machine. If you modify this particular machine and if anything goes wrong, then you'll have to again install the machine and that takes time. So to avoid that, what you have to do is like you have to install Windows 2019 evaluation version and you have to keep this as a gold image or base image and you should not touch this. Using this base machine, you will create three clones. One is the domain controller, that one will be the first node and the one will be the second node. So you will have three machines, first machine, second machine and third machine. The first machine will be domain controller plus file server. The second machine will be first node and it's a part of the cluster. The second node and the part of the cluster. So these are the three machines that you need. Now we are going to go to set up the domain controller. To set up the domain controller, you need a first machine. So what you are going to do is like you are going to rename that as a Win19DC. Again, that's your choice. You can change these host names and you are going to set the IP address. This is the IP address that I'm using. Now, the reason why I'm using 192.168.1 is because my router is in this subnet or my switch is the network switch is in this particular subnet. Now, based on where is your router configuration, what is your router IP, you might want to change this. So sometimes the router is 192.168.0. So if it is 10, then you change that IP to 0. So based on what is your router, you change this particular IP. So I'm using 192.168. So all of my IPs will be 192.168.1 and I can show it to you. So if I go to the command prompt and if I say IP config find str IP v4 find str 192.168.1, you can see that I got 192.168.1.8 IP of my machine. So because of this, I'll be using this particular IP subnet. Now you'll change the host name to this. You'll reboot it again. It's your choice. Once this is done, once the machine is rebooted, you will set up the domain controller. To set up the domain controller, you need to add a role called Active Directory Domain Services. So you'll add this particular role and you will promote the computer to a domain controller. Once that is done, you will reboot the machine. So you need to reboot the machine once it is promoted to the domain controller. You will what you will do is like you also log into the same machine and you will add another feature called SCSI target server, and then this particular machine can be configured as a file server. Now once that is done, we will create a shared disk. So we'll create a quorum of 10 GB. Again, it's your choice. Data of 20 GB is your choice. And we will give these two IPs. Which will be a SCSI target. So these two machines will be able to access these two shared drives. So we'll be giving these IPs. Now these are the IPs of your these are the IPs of your second and third machine. So you can see the domain controller has got 109. The first node has got 101. So 1, 1, 2, 2. And domain controller has got 109. So we will be giving the first node 1 IP and node 2 IP as a SCSI target. And we will also create a domain admin account called SQL SA. Now, at this moment, our work on the domain controller is done. So what we have done on the domain controller, we set the name, we installed the domain services, we promoted the computer as a domain controller, we installed the SCSI target server, we created a shared disk, a quorum and a data disk, and we mapped these two IPs as the SCSI target, and we created a domain account. At this moment, all of your work on the domain is completed. Now let's move to the node 1 and node 2. So in the node 1, whatever steps we do in node 1 and node 2, they are exactly same. And now because we have cloned this machine and every machine has got a unique system identifier SID, we need to generalize that particular machine. You need to change that sys using the sysprep utility, which is found under the Windows System32 sysprep. Under this, you will find a utility called sysprep. You can either use the sysprep in the GUI mode, or you can run it using the command window. You can either use it in the command window, or you can use it. You can use the GUI mode. Now these are the IP addresses for the node 1. So you'll change the node, again, it's your choice. So I'll keep Win19 node 1. This is the IP address. And remember that when I set the IP address, I'll be setting the default gateway and I'll be setting the DNS. And this DNS actually maps to the DC domain controller. And similarly here, everything remains the same. So you can see all the values remain the same except the IP address, which will be 102. So what this particular step, so sysprep on both the machines, the IP addresses, change the node name of second machine, set the IP. Now you will also add the failure cluster role. So we will add the failure cluster role. Now the next part is once we will also add these machines to the domain. So what we need to do is like we have to go to the PC properties, change settings and add to the domain. So we'll be adding both of these nodes to the domain. And then we will be connecting using the SCSI initiator. Using the SCSI initiator, we will be connecting to the domain controller, which will give us the two disks. Now this particular step on any node, we have to do it any node. So bring the disk online, initialize the disk, create the volume, and give disk letter. Now, once that is done, the final part is creating the failover cluster. I'll not talk about this now. When we reach to that particular point, I'll talk about this. So I'll start with the activity now. So let's move on. So first thing this is the first thing. Install Windows 2019, host name of your choice, adapter type, bridge adapter. We have to install the VMware tools and reboot the machine. So let's do that. So let's go to the VMware, and here you can see that I am using evaluation version. So I'm using the evaluation version. This is the version, and you can also see on the home, this is the evaluation version, which will end in 30 days. So I have downloaded, I do not have the license. I have downloaded the evaluation version. So click on the file, click on new virtual machine, custom, you can choose typical. I'll go with custom. Click next. This is all good. Click on next. I will install the operating system later. Click on next. Windows Server 2019. Here is a drop down. You can choose which operating system you want. I'm choosing Windows Server 2019. Windows, click on next, give some name. So this is our base machine. So I'm going to give Win19 base as the name of this machine. Click on next. Click change this to BIOS. Click on next. Processor, maybe change it to 4. Click on next. Memory, based on how much you have, I'll change it to 8 GB, 8192 MB, which is 8 GB. Click on next. Use bridge networking. This is important. Use bridge networking. Click on next. This is recommended, so I'm going to use that. NVMe, based on whether you have SCADA, ID, what kind of devices. I have NVMe, so I'm going to use NVMe. Create new virtual disk. Yes. How much you can, it's your choice. I'll choose 80. Split, no. I'll store it as a single file. Click on next and click on next and click on finish. So now that this is the base machine, it will not start because there is no ISO image. So click on this edit virtual machines. Go to this CD, use ISO image, click on browse, go to the location where you have stored your ISO image. This is the ISO image. Click OK. That's done. So we have inserted the disk into the machine. Power on the machine. Now you can definitely skip this particular part if you know how to install the Windows 2019 in VMware workstation, and probably everybody in the IT would know that, so you can skip it. But what I wanted to do is like I wanted to cover everything, so that is the reason why I'm doing this. So I'm going to say install now. Give it a minute or two. It will ask. I'm choosing Windows Server 2019 data center evaluation. Click on next. I accept the license. Click on custom install Windows. Click on next. And now the installation will start. The installation of OS will take time based on how much RAM, memory, and how much powerful your machine is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video and come back once the installation of this machine is completed. So it's prompting me for the restart. Windows needs to restart to continue. So installation looks good. So I'm going to say restart now. The machine is getting restarted. And we are almost there. It went for the reboot second time. So it was trying to install some of the softwares. And here, give a complicated password. That's done. Click on finish. Log into the machine. Password looks incorrect. Give the correct password. That's done. I'm logging into this particular machine for the first time. Click on yes. Now what we are going to do is this one we can ignore. So what we are going to do is we are going to set some of the, okay, we are not going to do anything. So what we are going to do now is we are going to install the VMware tools. The second part is install VMware tools and reboot. So I'm going to install that. So here you can see I've inserted. So from here I said install VMware tools and here it appeared. So choose what happens with this. So I'm going to say run setup. So it's going to install VMware tools for me. Click next. Typical is fine. Install. So once this particular installation is done, basically it will go for the reboot. So what we will do is like, because we will set this as a domain controller, the base machine. So what I'll do is like, I will change this to avoid my reboot again and again. So what I'll do is I'll say no to this and I'll change the node name of this machine because otherwise I have to keep rebooting again and again. So I'll change the node name of this machine as Win19DC. Click OK. And it will again prompt me that you need to reboot. So close, and now I'm going to say restart now. So I have installed the VMware guest edition VMware tools, and I have also changed the host name, and I'm rebooting this machine. I will not do anything more than that. So what I'll do now is I'm going to clone these machines into three different. So this is the base image. So I'm going to clone these machines into three different images. So I'm going to just I'm just going to log into this particular machine, shut it down. So I'm going to log into this particular machine. This is the base image. I'm going to, again, I gave the wrong password. God, why it's not taking for whatever reason. Okay. Okay, so what exactly happened? So let me try one more time. Okay. So looks like I was entering the wrong password. So anyway, so do not show this, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shut it down. So I have installed the VMware tools and I have changed the host name, and you can verify. So you can see this PC properties, and this is Win19DC. So I'm going to shut down this particular machine. So maybe planned shutdown. So I'm going to shut this particular machine. Once I've shut down this particular machine, the next part is to clone this, make 3 clones of this Win19DC, Win19 Node 1, Win19 Node 2. This is the domain controller plus file server. This is your Node 1. This is your Node 2 in the nodes of the cluster. So now let's close this. What we are going to do is we are going to right click on this, click on manage, click on clone, say next, the current state, this is fine. Create a full clone, click on next, give it the name, whatever name you want. So I'll say Win19DC. So this will be domain controller. So I'm giving the name Win19DC. Click on finish. It's going to create a clone of the base machine. And this we will use as a domain controller. So here you can see a domain controller appeared. Now I'm going to go back again and I'm going to clone. I'm going to clone the base machine once again. So manage, clone. This time I'll give the name as Win19 Node 1. So I'll copy this. Current state, full clone, next, Win19 Node 1, click on finish. So this is going to create another machine for me. And that's close. Now the next part is the third machine. So again, manage, clone, next, current state, full clone, next, and I'm going to say Node 2. So now I got 3 machines. Once this is done, I'm going to remove this base machine. So because I don't want to do anything mistakenly, so I'm going to remove it. It's not going to delete the machine. It's just going to remove it from my library. So I'm going to remove it. So now I got 3 machines, Win19DC, Node 1, Node 2. Our first work is on the node domain controller because we need to set some things. So now we have created 3 clones. Now the first thing is set up the domain controller and file server. This particular machine will be domain controller plus file server. So power on this particular machine. Right. So VM SAN controller, I'll delete, log into that particular machine. And now what we are going to do is we are going to, let's check the host name. The host name should be Win19DC. So looks good. Now we will set the IP address of this particular machine. So this is the IP address that we are going to set. So I'm going to go here and click on this adapter, open network and internet settings, change adapter options, click on properties, uncheck IPv6, click on IPv4, click on properties, enter the IP address. Sometimes the copy paste don't work, so let's see. Yeah, that worked. And here I'm going to say okay. So that's done. Disable and enable it. Right. So we got, now let's verify two things, the host name and the host name. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so that everybody can see it clearly. So you can see host name and IP config should say 192.168.1.109. So that looks good. The next part is installing the domain controller. So for that, launch server manager, add roles and features. Wait for this to finish. Add roles and feature. Click on next. Role based feature installation. Click on next. Choose the current machine. Click on next. Active Directory Domain Services. So we are going to choose Active Directory Domain Services, add features. Click on next, click on next, click on next. If needs it restarted, let it restart. So, and click on install. So this installation is going to take some time. So I'm going to pause and come back once installation is done. So installation is completed. You can see installation succeeded. I'm going to close this, and here you can see a triangle notification. So I'm going to click on this notification and it says promote this server to domain controller. So we have added a domain services feature. Now we need to promote this server to a domain controller. So this is the next step. So promote the computer to a domain controller. So we are going to do that. So add a new forest. So I'm going to minimize this and I'll keep it in the middle. So add a new forest, give the name of your whatever name you want to give. So I'm going to give db.com. This will be the domain name. So click on next. And here we have to give the directory services restore mode password. Give some complicated password. That's done. Click on next. We don't have to do that. The NetBIOS domain name is going to automatically choose the DB. So it's going to automatically choose this NetBIOS domain name. I don't have to type it. Give it a minute. So you can see that's done. Click on next. And then these are the default paths. I'm okay with this. And this is the summary. If everything looks good, then click on next. It's going to do the prerequisite checks. So it's going to do the prerequisite checks. It's going to take few seconds, not few minutes. It's going to do all of the checks. And if everything looks good and all prerequisite checks pass successfully, and then we are going to click on install. The installation is going to take some time. This is going to take some time. So I'm going to pause it and come back once it is finished. So we are almost there, not at finished. We are almost there. Configuring the DNS services, server services on this computer. So it's not at finished, but you can see the server was successfully configured, and then I don't have to do anything. It's automatically going for a reboot. I don't have to do anything. So I'm not, you can see on the screen, my mouse is, I'm not moving my mouse. So it's going to automatically reboot this particular machine. So right now it's going to promote this computer. So we have installed it, we have promoted it as a domain controller. It's going to reconfigure some settings. The domain controller is a powerful machine, so it needs time to reboot and all that stuff. So this particular step is going to take 5 to 10 minutes based on how powerful your base machine is. I'm going to pause the video and wait for it to completely come online. So it's still doing this. I do not know at what point I stopped it, but probably at 23:55. Right now it's 0000. So basically 12 midnight. And I believe it has been doing this for close to 5 minutes. However, if I'm not wrong, then within few seconds or probably another minute, and I just wanted to show you that this particular steps takes a long time. So if once you install the domain controller and you promote the domain services, and when you promote it as a domain controller, and when you do the first reboot, if it takes time, then probably have patience. Do not reboot the machine because it is configuring itself in the background. So have patience, and even I was hoping that it should finish. So I do not know whether it's going to take one more minute. So let's give it a minute. So yeah, it has taken more than that minute. So I was expecting that to finish, and that's why I unpaused this particular video, thinking that by within 5 minutes it will be done. But it definitely has taken more than 5 minutes, more than 6 minutes actually. So give another, yeah, that's done. So maybe it has taken 6+ minutes. So that's done, and the timing is off here. I think this is US timing, so that's fine. I'm not going to play around that. If you want to change the time zone, definitely you can change the time zone, etc., etc. I'm not going to change that. So that's fine. So now then what we are going to do now is we are going to log into this particular machine, and we need to install one more role. Now we are machine is configured as a, and you can see that is a db/admin, which means a domain/administrator. So I'm going to log into the to the domain. So now this particular machine is part of the domain. So you can click on this and click on the properties, and you can see the full name of this is win19dc.db.com, which means that this particular machine is part of the cluster. Now what we are going to do is, what we are going to do now is we have to, so this part is done. So we are now going to install the SCSI target server. So this is the second part. So before doing that, let me actually check, and I'm going to show it to you. So that if the SCSI is running, so then that should be a port called 3260 that should be running. So I'm going to say, give me the ports which are listening. So these are all the ports which are listening. I'm going to clear this. I'm not bothered about all the ports. I'm bothered about a port called 3260. So I'm going to just say 326, and you can see 3268 and 3269 is listening. There is no port called 3260 which is listening. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the server manager once again. Wait for it to finish. So that's done. Add roles and feature. Click next, click next, click next. And here under the file storage, I'm going to say iSCSI target server. I'm going to say iSCSI target server. I'm going to click on next, click on next. If it needs restart, I'll say restart. Yes. Click on install, and let's see if it needs a restart. And basically right now I'm installing the SCSI target. So basically to convert this particular machine into the file server, right now it is just a domain controller. So I'm going to create some shared disk on this. So to do that, so installation succeeded. Close this, and now let me run this particular command, and you can see we have got a IP called we have got a port called 3260 which is listening. This particular port will allow this particular machine to be connected using the SCSI protocol. Now that's done. So now we'll go to the file and storage. So server manager again, file and storage services, SCSI protocol. To create a SCSI virtual disk, so we'll give this, and here if you have another drive, you can configure it in another drive or in a different path. I don't have another drive, so click on next, give a name, so maybe quorum disk. So I'm going to give this quorum disk. Click next, 10 GB, so give the size. You can choose 1 GB or based on your new SCSI target. Click on next, and let's say a cluster. Click next, add, these are the targets. So this IP address, so the IP address of the first IP address of the first machine, so that will be 192.168.1.101, the node 1. Click OK. Add another target, which is the second IP address, 102. That's done. So these two machines will be able to access this particular drives. Click on next, and create. So if everything looks good, we'll say create. So now the first one is done. So now we'll create one more. So right click on this, create new SCSI drive, click on next. The second one will be data. The first one was quorum, second one is data. So give some size. So let's say 20 GB for the data. Again, is your choice. Click on next. Same, I'm going to choose the same target. So same target, both the disk will be and I'm going to create this. So now I got two SCSI targets. One is quorum, which is of 10 GB. One is data, which is of 20 GB. All good. Now the final step is create one domain account, SQL SA. So what we are going to do is I'm going to create a domain account and that will be domain admin. So I'm going to go to Active Directory, users and computers, and under this, I'm going to click expand this db.com users and right click on this and I'll say new user and I'll say SQL SA. You can choose whatever you want. So I'm going to create this and click on next. If you want to change the password at next login and all that stuff, you can do that. But I'm going to say user cannot change the password. Password never expires. It's your choice based on your security standards. You will go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create this domain account and that's done. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on that domain account, click on the properties, click on the member of, and I'm going to make this user as the domain admin. So I'm going to make this user as a domain admin. So click on OK, click on apply, click on OK. So now you can see that this user is domain admin. All good. So at this moment, our work on domain controller is done. Our domain controller is set up. The file, we create a shared disk, we set up a domain user. All of our work on the domain controller is done. So we can safely log out from this particular machine. Now let's go to the first machine. It is still turned off. And now the steps that we are going to do on node 1 and node 2 are exactly same. So I'm going to save your time and save my time. I'm going to power on both of the machines at the same time. And I'm going to do the steps parallelly. Instead of doing one at a time, I'm going to do that parallelly. So I'm powering on both the machines. So that the node 1 is powered on, node 2 is powered on. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to log in to both of the machines. So I've logged into the first machine. Let me log into the second machine, second node. Our work on domain controller is done. So I'm not going to do anything on the domain controller. Everything now on node 1 and node 2. If we have issues, then probably we'll go to the domain controller. So first thing is we need to change the IP address. So no, before changing the IP address, we need to do the sysprep because this is the clone. So we need to do the sysprep. So for in one of the machine, I'll actually go to this location, and under this location you will find and I'll do it via GUI. So let me minimize this. Open Explorer, go to this location. Here under this Windows System 32 sysprep, you can find a sysprep, run as administrator, OOBE, out of box experience, generalize, reboot. Click on OK. So it's going to do that. In the next machine, I'm going to use this command prompt. So instead of exactly same, so generalize, OOB. So these options are mentioned in the command. So you can see here. So if you see this, then you can see sysprep, generalize, OOB, reboot. So instead of doing it manually, we can do this. So on the second node, I'm going to do that using the command prompt. So launch command prompt as administrator and run this particular command. So this in the second node, I'm doing the sysprep. However, using the GUI, using the command prompt. In the first one, I'm doing, and after that, there is an option to reboot. So automatically, the node 1 is rebooted, and once this is done, the node 2 will also get reboot. Reboot will happen automatically. So wait for it. So it's getting ready. So I'll pause and come back once the reboot is done. I think it has already been done, so I don't have to pause it. No, it's still going through. Maybe multiple reboots. Yeah. So now I'll change the country. So it's again because we changed it. So I'm in India. So I'm going to say India. Click on next and accept the license. Give the strong password. It will not take a simple password. You need to give a strong password. So give a strong password. Click on finish. And here as well. So it's getting rebooted. So wait for it. You need to have a lot of patience because it is Windows. Windows needs multiple reboots. So every action that you need, most of the action needs multiple reboots. So you need to have a patience for the machines to be rebooted multiple times while this particular setup is happening. So now I'm setting up the node 2. So now I'm going to log into the first node. What we have done till now is we have just done the sysprep on the first node and sysprep on the second node. That's all we have done as of now. So the second machine is also ready for us to log in. So let's log into the second machine as well. So that's done. Now click on yes. Click on yes. Now what we are going to do is we are going to the next part is setting the IP and changing the node name. So I'm going to take this particular IP address, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to go to node 1, change open network settings, change adapter options, click on properties, IPv6, uncheck it, IPv4, click on properties, use the following IP address 192.168, 192.168, and here this should be actually the IP of the domain controller. So I'm going to change the last letter to 9 because that's the domain controller, and the default gateway I'm going to say 192.168.1.1. And if you wonder what is 1.1, it's the IP of my router. This is the IP of my router. So this is the default gateway. So now I got the IP address, I got the subnet mask, I got the default gateway. This is the domain controller IP. Click on OK, click on close, disable it, enable it. That's done. Now I have to do the same thing on the second node as well. So let's do the same thing. Minimize this, open network, internet and network settings, change adapter options, right click on it, click on the properties, IPv6, uncheck it, IPv4, click on properties, use following address, and here I have to change it to 2 because this is the second node. The default gateway will remain the same, everything else will remain the same, and the DNS server is the IP of your domain controller. So that's all good. So that's done. Disable it, enable it. The next part is we are going to change the host name. So I'm going to click on properties and I'm going to advanced system settings and computer name change, and I'm going to change this to the node 1. So the first node will have the name as node 1. So I'm going to click OK, and it's actually it will ask for the reboot. So after changing the node, we need to reboot. So I'm going to say restart now, and I'm going to go here. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to right click on it, click on this PC, properties, change settings, change, and I'm going to give this as a node 2. So I'm going to give this particular machines node 1 and node 2. No work on domain controller. Domain controller work is done. So I'm going to restart this particular machine. Once the machines are restarted, now we need to install failover clustering role. So we need to install failover clustering role. So let's do that. Or before doing that, actually failover clustering role, we need to actually do another thing. So I'm going to do two things at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join this machine to the cluster, and also I'm going to add a role. So first thing is we need to join this particular machine. So add a failover cluster role. So yeah, we can do the failover cluster role, and then we can also join this machine to the domain. Both of this action will need a reboot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do both at the same time to save my time. So add roles and feature, click on next, click on next, click on next, click on next, and here you will find failover clustering, add feature, click on next. I'll not say restart this time because I will do the manual restart. So I'm going to say install. The same thing I'm going to do on node 2. So go to the second node. And I'm going to go to the server. Is going to launch server manager for me. Let's wait for it to complete the data collection. That's done. Add roles and features. Click on next, click on next, click on next, click on next, failover clustering, add features, click on next. I'm not going to restart it, install. Now I'm going to go back to the node 1. This particular needs a restart. So a restart is pending. However, I'm not going to restart it. I'm going to close this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click on the machine. this PC, right click on the properties, change settings, and change, and here I'm going to join this to domain, which is the db.com. This is the domain name. I'm going to change this to, I'm going to connect this machine to the db.com. It asks me the password of the domain controller, so I'm going to give the password of domain admin. That's if welcome to db.com. So that's good, looks like. And now it will ask us to restart, and I'm going to say restart now, and I'm going to go to the second node. Restart is pending. I'm not going to do the restart. I'm going to join this particular machine to the domain, and I'm going to restart this particular machine. So this will save at least one restart. I do not know how many restarts we need to do, but at least this will save us one restart. So I'm going to now go to the change domain db.com. Okay, ask for the domain admin password, give the domain admin password, and click on OK. If everything looks good, welcome to db.com domain. Click OK, click close, and restart now. So now I'm restarted both the machines. Now we have what we have done. Let's revise what we have done. So we changed the IP address, we set the domain name of the machine, we change the IP address, we did it on both the machine, we rebooted the machine. Then we added the failover clustering. We did not reboot the machine. We joined the machines to the db.com domain. So we joined the machine. Now, now what we need to do is we need to connect to the shared disks. The two disks that we got, we need to connect to that. And those disks are on the domain controller, and this is the IP of the domain controller. So I'm going to take that particular IP. So I'm going to put it here. Yeah, it's here. So now I'm going to log into the both of the machine. So let's go to the first machine. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to eject this particular operating system disk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the disk management. I could open it from here. So computer management, minimize this and bring it in between. And you can see under the disk management, I only have one disk, which is C drive. I do not, and this is the DVD drive. This is the ISO image. So this is the disk that I have. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to the server manager, click on tools, click on SCSI initiator. Yes, start it automatically. And then it will open a SCSI initiator, this one. I'm going to put the IP address of my domain controllers. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say quick connect, and it got connected. Login is successful. Done. Okay. And now I'm going to go to the disk management, and you can see a 10 GB disk and a 20 GB disk. And from where this disk appeared, these are the disks which we configured: a quorum disk of 10 GB and a data disk of 20 GB. These are the shared disks. Now what we need to do is we need to bring the disk online, initialize the disk, create the volume, give the disk letter. Now let's do that. So first thing is bring it online. Both of the disks, I brought it online. Now next part is, once they have been brought online, I'm going to click on initialize disk, choose GPT. So I'm going to choose both of the disks, and I'm going to say initialize those disks, click on OK. So both of the disks are now online, and both of the disks are initiated as a GPT disk. Now I'm going to create a new simple volume. So 10 GB disk, I'm going to give letter as Q as a quorum. So I'm going to give the name as quorum. Again, it's your choice, whatever name you want to give, that's your choice based. So that's done, and I'm going to create a new simple volume, and this one will be E, that is okay, and I'm going to give this as a data disk. So that's done. Click on finish. So now I got two disks, Q and E. These are the SCSI disks. We need to do the same thing on the second node now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the second node, log into the second node, and what I'm going to do now here is I'm going to connect to the SCSI drive. So click on tools and SCSI initiator. Yes, start it, minimize this, and give the IP address of the domain controller or of your file server. So this one. Sometimes the copy paste, for whatever reason, the copy paste don't work. Okay, that's fine. It doesn't work. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It's a bit flaky. So that's done. And before doing that, again, here you will find under the disk management. So if you do disk management, you will see that we do not have the Q and E drive. We have only this DVD drive. So we do not have those two disks. So now I'm going to say quick connect, and at the back end, you will see those two disks connecting. So that's done. So you got your two disks. Now I'm not going to bring them online because those disks are online on one node. So I'm not going to do that here. So now we have connected to the shared disk. Now we are at the step where we are going to create a failover cluster. So everything is done. So now all of our prerequisites are done. So now we are going to create a failover cluster. Now to create a failover cluster, you need to open the failover cluster manager, and you need to validate the configuration. You can skip this, but not a good practice. Add both nodes to the validation and run the validation. And once the validation is done, you can create the cluster. You can open again failover cluster manager, and you can add both nodes, provide cluster name, provide the cluster IP, and you can create the cluster. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do it twice. So once the validation is done, I'm going to create the cluster, and I'll show you how. So now we need to open the failover cluster. So, and we have to create the cluster from any node. You don't have to do this on both the machines. You have to do it on any one of the node. So I'm going to go to the node 1. I'm going to minimize this, go to the server manager, go to the tools, go to the failover cluster manager, and I'm going to say, do not show me this, and click here. And what we are going to do here, first thing is you can either choose to create a cluster or you can choose the validate configuration. It is always better to validate the configuration because validate configuration will give you any errors. So validate the configuration. So I'm chose the validate configuration, and then click on next, and let's see. Yeah, so enter the name. So this is the name of your first node. So enter the node names of both the machines. So I'm going to choose that, add that particular machine. So this is the machine. It automatically identified what is that machine, and it identify the second machine. Click on next and run all tests. This is recommended. So run all tests. So it's going to run. So basically, if I don't say run inventory, network, storage, we don't have storage space direct, system configuration. These are the tests that it is going to run, and we can choose what test it has to run. So instead of that, I'm going to say run all tests, click on next, and if you see here in the background, the tests are currently running. Test is currently running. Now, the thing is, there are a lot of the tests, and that will take time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video and come back once these tests are completed. So looks like we are almost there. So it's now running the network configuration. So almost there, not at finished. So I just wanted to show you that it does take time. So this test, because it's going to validate a lot of things. So it's going to, and we might see some warnings in IP configuration. I'll explain you why. And basically the reason is when you set up the cluster, you need to make sure that you set up multiple networks, one for the heartbeat, one for the public, one for the private. However, the way we have built the cluster, we have only used the one network configuration, and that is why it shows us the tests have been passed, but there are some warnings. So what we can do is like we can view report. It's going to ask me later. It's going to open up this particular report in a browser, and you can see we have issues on the network. So I'm going to click on this network, and let's see what warnings we have got. So scroll down and figure out. It actually should directly take me there, but for some reason it is not taking me there. So I'm going to scroll down and find out where are those warnings. So I'm going down, and those warnings will be either in the red or yellow based on the severity. So let's go down, keep going down, and somewhere here, and you can see it says here node is reachable by only one pair of network interface. So basically, because we have only one network interface, it is a single point of failure, which is not a good practice. So you need to have multiple network interfaces. However, this will not cause any issue. We can still create our cluster. This is a warning. This is not an error. So I'm going to ignore this. And now instead of restarting again, you can close this, and you can close this, and you can again create a cluster. So instead of doing that, I'm going to say create the cluster now using the validated node. So I don't have to again add those. So the cluster is going to create on node 1 and node 2. So I'm going to click on finish and click on next. And here I need to give the name of the cluster. Before doing that, I'm going to show you something. So if I open command prompt, let me make this screen a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say ping and ping. For some reason it's not taking W. Ping win19c. So I'm going to give that name. Okay, just give me a minute, guys. Okay, so win19c. So ping this, and you can see it's not pinging. So it cannot find this particular host. Keep a note of this. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give the name of the cluster win19c, and I'm going to give the IP of the cluster, and I'm going to choose 110. This is the IP of the cluster, and click on next. And this is the summary. Add all eligible storage to the cluster. So whatever disk we created, those disks will be added. All of that will be configured. So click on next, and now it's creating the cluster for us, forming the cluster. So wait for a few seconds. Keep a note on this, and let's see if it started pinging. So it should automatically register itself with the IP. So that's done. So now I'm going to do one more time, and you can see the ping which was failing is now giving us, and this is the IP of your cluster. So win19c is the IP of your cluster. Now we are done. This tutorial is done, but however, I just want to show you. So now if I click on finish and go to the rows, there are no rows because we just created the cluster. But if you see the nodes, we got two nodes, win19 node 1, win19 node 2. So these are the two nodes in the cluster. Both the nodes are up. If I go to the storage, if you go to the disk, you can see we have one disk, which is the Quorum disk 10 GB. We have got the second disk, which is the 20 GB. And now it shows here cluster disk 1, cluster disk 2. What you can do is like you can change the name of this. So this is the Quorum disk. So you can change the name, apply, click OK. So we have changed the name, and I'm going to do the similar for the second disk, which is the data disk. Again, these are your choices. You can change whatever you want. So now we got two disks here. The one is the data disk of 20 GB. One is the Quorum disk. Both of the disks are now connected, and our cluster is completely done. So what we saw here is basically how to set up in this particular tutorial, we saw how to do the step-by-step setup of Windows Server 2019 failover cluster using VMware Workstation Pro 17. Again, we need only two softwares. The two software is Windows Server 2019 evaluation version, VMware Workstation Pro 17. Both of these are evaluation version. I have downloaded them from the internet and I have installed them on my machine, and those are the only two softwares that have been used to create this particular cluster. We do not need anything else. I hope this particular tutorial was useful. Thank you for watching, and see you in next tutorial. Bye bye.